So if you buy the Zuperdac, this is all you'll be getting. Now, keep in mind that I bought this about 2 weeks ago, and I did not buy it from Mousetrap. I bought it from their actual website. Like I PayPal'd them the money and they sent it over to me here in the UK. This is it. This is what I think I paid about $80 with shipping. So if you are in the US and you want to get on the Mousetrap listing for this, you'll be saving, quite a bit, a little bit more than I did, basically. So this is the Zuperdac. Now, if, those of you who have seen my AudioQuest 1.2 Dragonfly review, you probably know what I'm going to be talking about. This is a USB DAC amp, which is in the form of a stick. The whole premise of this is that you have the DAC built in, you have a little bit of an amp in there, and it can drive a few things, can't drive some other things, and you can just plug it into your laptop, plug and play, and then you have some good quality audio compared to the Realtek drivers and any kind of motherboard built-in drivers or capabilities. So shout out to my boy Wasabi for introducing me to this. I bought it almost immediately afterwards. I think this came as the result of an Indiegogo campaign. I'm not sure because I did see a video which showed this off. And it was kind of funny because it was kind of like cool marketing kind of thing that, paint by numbers marketing you see on the internet these days to convince people to invest in like crowdfunding. So I'll put a link in the description because I just find it kind of hilarious. It kind of just tells you what it is to like the casual person. This will make your audio sound better compared to your phone or what, because people do plug this into their phone. I've been using it with my laptop, but this can be plugged into your phone with an adapter or some kind of dongle or something. So yeah, this is basically all you get. It's a pretty simple little box. You've got the Zorloo logo. That's their company name, Zorloo, and that's their logo. Little, it's like the two O's have like a frowny face, and the Zuperdac. So let me just get this opened up, and I will show you what is inside. So nothing on this side. You have a little bit of a manual, I guess. Just sounds good, they claim. Portable USB DAC, and it gives you some basic instructions, very visual based, not a lot of writing or anything, and it gives you a bunch of specs. Now the audio DAC is an ES9018 K2M Sabre. Now that really caught my attention because Sabre DACs are, it's not exactly the same that's being used in the Audio GD NFB 11 and 28. It's an implementation of that. I think that's without the K2M. I have to double check that later. But the headphone amplifier is a Sabre ES9601 USB audio class 2. It goes up to, the Dragonfly, for reference, used to, the 1.2 used to go up to 24 bits, 96 kilohertz. This goes up to 192 kilohertz, 24 bits, output level 1 VR. Okay, yeah. Basically all this stuff right here. And look, foobar. Cool. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward what you do with this. You just go to their website, you download the driver, and you can just use it on your laptop easily. This is the thing itself. And that's it. There's nothing else in this box. So I'm pretty much done with the box. Put it over here. Done with the manual. Put it over here. This is what it's all about. Design wise, I do like this quite a bit more than the Dragonfly, even though the Dragonfly had this cool feature where different bit rates would have different colors on it. I could do without that. It doesn't really matter to me. This is like a sleek, metallic looking industrial design. There's their logo, the Z right there. And this is it. It looks like a normal USB stick. So, and yeah, you got a little 3.5mm out right there, just like the Dragonfly. So what does this sound like? Well, there's a term that was introduced to me by Ishka, also Kyle Ishka, on the subreddit and in the Discord channel. It's called glare. Glare is something that I've heard in the past, but I never really used glare to describe it. I would call it like sibilance or some kind of treble harshness. Basically, it's a feeling you get when something kind of like it kind of stings a little bit, the treble. The reason for that is that this is a very raw sounding DAC in the sense that it doesn't seem to pull any punches with the detail to me. It's very detailed, very very detailed. The DAC feature, I can plug in anything that I plug into this will sound probably much more detailed than my cell phone, than even my digital audio players, and more detailed, definitely more detailed than my laptop out jack, whatever. So it has a good amount of texture to the sound. Like you'll have more air around the instruments if you're listening to certain kinds of music, listening to some orchestral music, and you're like listening to it on earbuds or even IEMs. It'll sound. There will be more, just basically more in the region where it gives you that feeling of more air and more separation. The separation is immense on this. It's much more than the Dragonfly, that what I remember. And I was impressed with the Dragonfly 1.2 at the time. In fact, I started using it instead of my shit Modi 2 Uber because I felt like the separation of the Dragonfly was just a bit more. And this is even more than that. But the glare it can be an issue because what happens is this changes how things sound in headphones. Before I talk about that, let me just talk about the amp. This will not drive a lot of things. Like, don't be fooled by the term amp. Yeah, there's an amp. It'll get louder than your output on your laptop or your phone, definitely. But it's not going to drive, let's say, the Illyr. I plugged the Illyr, the Focal Illyr, into this. Didn't drive it at all. Yeah, it did a little bit of a job, but the bass was just not there, which is another feature of this, which I'll talk about soon. It didn't sound very pleasing. The treble got really harsh. The 9 to 10K treble peak on the layer, which I like, but some people hate. That got really harsh. I wouldn't recommend using it with full size cans unless they're really easy to drive full size cans. So, what this does is to different cans that I have and different earbuds and stuff. Let me give you an example right now. Let's use the example of the Meze 99 Classic. This is a very bass and mid-heavy can. The treble extension only goes up to a certain point where I call comfortable. And that's the sound signature that I've enjoyed with these for so long. Since I've had them for like 6-7 months now. But the thing about these cans are that they're really heavy on the bass, which is, that's their main feature. What happens if you plug it into this, though, is very strange because suddenly the treble there's more of it. And there's a certain level where I thought I'd never hear on the Meze 99 where some things would just bite me in terms of treble. I was like, how is this headphone doing that? I never did that before. Didn't do that with any source I plugged it into before. And suddenly, certain like S kind of things in songs, like they were giving me off like a bit of sibilance, and I thought that was a little strange. But there was definitely more detail all around. Like this, I wouldn't call it an immensely detailed can, but there was more of it. But the bass was reduced. Now that was a bit of a deal breaker with this pairing because the bass on this is just so important for its overall sound signature and what it's trying to do and what it's sold for, what it's competing with, Beat Solo 2, and that whole thing. If you reduce the bass on this because of this, then there's not really much point of using this. And the mids, even though they sound more crystal clear, it sounds more lean to my ears instead of the warm, thick forward sound that it usually has. So I wouldn't call this a good pairing at all. But it was surprising to me how much the sound characteristics changed just because of the Zorloo Zuperdac. Alright, let me try. This was a better pairing to my ears. This is the Sennheiser HD598 Close Edition. With this, I heard a little bit more instrument separation than I usually do because this is not a very articulate can. Compared to the normal open version, this doesn't do instrument separation so well. It doesn't have as much soundstage. I find it more fun to listen to personally. I like the sound signature a bit more. That's why I've sold the other one, and I have this now. But it doesn't have what people call the more hi-fi sound, the more audiophile sound of detail and all that. It has it, but it's not as much. With the Zuperdac, it's there. It's there. It's not as pronounced as even not as pronounced to satisfy lovers of the HD800 or anything like that, but it's still there. It provides a good amount of detail. The bass reduction is not that much. In fact, I will call it makes the bass a bit leaner, but it doesn't really make it disappear. It just, with this, I would say it's a good pairing because the mids in this are a little recessed anyway, so whatever you put through here, it's not going to make a warm, lush, mid-range, heavy headphone recess and make you feel displeased or unsatisfied. With this, it just does just fine in that regard. And you don't need much to drive these anyway. These are like 23 ohms or something. So this was an okay, well, good pairing, I'd actually say. But let's talk about the DAC chip itself. This has an ESS Sabre, via Mark version 2 or something like that, right? Now, this is the own M1S, their new digital audio player, which is either out or coming out soon. I'll review this later. This and this have the same DAC chip. The very same DAC chip, exactly to a T, the same DAC chip, but they don't sound alike. Now, I used to make this mistake a long time ago, that I would think, okay, this has the same DAC chip as that. That means it must sound about the same. Well, yeah, that's what people seem to think when they quote each other the specs of different stuff. However, DACs are more about implementation. They're about programming. They're about all kinds of really cool things that I don't fully understand, but are very impressive to people who are into the whole technology side of audio. What digital analog converters can do. Zorloo's implementation of the Sabre is very harsh, has a bit of glare, but it's very detailed and it's heavy on the texture of the sound, very heavy on the separation of the music. This has a more natural sound to it. This has a slightly more laid back sound to it. It doesn't sound harsh to me at all. Compared to my Basso DX80, it doesn't sound overly warm either. It just has a good amount of detail, and it doesn't go to a point where I feel like, oh, that kind of hurts a little bit with some pairings. So this has a more natural coded whatever, I don't know how they do it exactly, low pass filters and stuff like that. This has a more natural sound to it, using the same DAC as this. This is a trailblazer. The Zuperdac does not care for mincing words. It doesn't care for telling you that, oh, it's, I'll just make this a little more fun sounding for you, a little more musically tuned. Doesn't care for those things. And I have to admire it for that. I'm very glad I bought this, to be honest, because now I have something in my collection. Because first of all, if I just go somewhere with my laptop and I want to plug in like the VE Monk into it, and I don't want to use the output jack because it's not that detailed, it's a little muddy with the VE Monk, I can just plug this in, and then suddenly the VE Monk sounds like it should on a good setup. There's just so much detail, and it doesn't pull any punches, and I really do admire that about this, because yes, it's harsh. Yes, this is trouble. It has some glare issues. Yes, it can like transform some headphones into something you don't want it to be. But it just sounds really good. The texture is just there. I don't care if it drives things or not. Oh, there is one more disadvantage that I should talk about. I haven't done this personally, but I looked on Headfire and people's other reviews. This really drains the battery of your cell phone, your smartphone. I haven't done it personally. I don't know, but apparently this is a power hog when it's plugged into a portable device like a cell phone. So keep that in mind, because I know the Dragonfly might do that as well. I'm not sure. Probably not as much, but this takes quite a bit of power. So I will just be using it with my laptop, or if I have a desktop somewhere with that. Very clean background. I do believe that there is some output impedance things with very, very sensitive like IEMs, but with the stuff that I have, because I don't have anything in my possession right now which is super super low impedance, and so I can't really judge that so far. With my Monk, the background sounded really black and very clear. There was no hissing or anything like that. even with my 23 ohm Sennheiser HD598 closed edition, didn't hear that either. But if you did plug something like, I would have to imagine, and one of those IEMs which are like 8 ohms or something ridiculously like that, like 16 ohms, do tell me in the comments if you're in the Moss drop and you're buying this and you pair them with something like that. Do let me know, because I'm very interested in how that pairs, and I can't test it myself, so I want to know anyway. So overall, I'm glad I bought this. Sorry for my voice right now. I'm glad I bought this. It gives me an alternative to many things in my library, many things in my possession right now. I've got 2 amp DACs, I've got 2 digital audio players, all with their own different implementations of DACs and all that. This gives me something which is clear, which is, even if it is harsh, I appreciate the details still. It's an interesting thing to have in your library. It's not something you'll be probably reaching for every day, but it's a convenience thing if you need to travel somewhere and you don't want to rely on you don't want to rely on the Realtek drivers or whatever the hell the person has. You can just bring this along with you. Because look, it's basically just a USB stick, one of the older ones back before they became ridiculously small. So, nice product. If you're in the Moss drop and you pair with your stuff, do let me know in the comments later. And that's been my review, and thank you for watching.